Good evening, everyone. We're going to be covering kind of an overview of the Macintosh's new operating system for the computers, laptops and desktops, which is operating system 10.14 with the name of Mojave. So as we go into that, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I own a company called Naples Mac Help. I've been using Apple computers since 1986. I started when I was in college. I've never owned a PC. Most recently, I have my 10.13 certification for High Sierra because the 10.14 Mojave books don't even come out until January. So I can't even get the study materials for the new operating system until the spring. So that's when I'll go through that process. And I assist both residences and businesses in town. And over the years, my little logo on my business card has changed. So I started out with hair, that was before I got married, and then after I had kids, I looked like this. And then now I've got my little emoji. So things evolved, but I'm still doing what I'm doing. So macOS 10.14 Mojave is the 15th major release of the Macintosh operating system. And this is the successor to High Sierra, and it was released to the public on September 24th of this year. Or last year, I'm sorry. No, this year. Okay, we're not 19 yet, so this year. So hardware requirements for Mojave. If you have a newer, either a MacBook, the Retina version, which is the 12-inch MacBook, or the iMac Pro, those are totally compatible. If you have a MacBook Air or MacBook Pro, mid-2012 or newer are the requirements. If you have a Mac Mini, it needs to be late 2012 or newer. An iMac needs to be late 2012 or newer. And a Mac Pro needs to be late 2013 or newer, unless they have an upgraded GPU. So certain Mac Pros, the trash can style Mac Pro, the early ones can be upgraded if you upgrade the GPU in that device. So the reason it drops support for many older Mac models because it relies on Metal, which requires a certain type of graphics card and processor in the computer. The older models do not have the new Intel high-def graphics cards. So that's the biggest barrier to the older machines being upgradable is that the video can't process what the computer needs to deliver. So the requirement, Mojave requires at least 2 gigabytes of memory, which has been the standard memory requirement, although most everybody with any of these machines is going to have either 4, 8, or 16 as a base starting point for memory. This is one of the bigger installers that we've seen in a couple of years. If you're coming from High Sierra, El Capitan, or Sierra, it needs 12.5 gigabytes. But if you're going straight from Yosemite or an earlier release, it needs 18 gigabytes. So it's quite a larger installer than we've seen with the past few updates. And depending on your operating system, if you're using an older operating system and going straight to Mojave, the installer might get a little larger. So that would only be in consideration if you were running low on free space. So you've probably seen on your current Mac with High Sierra some 32-bit warnings that if you open a certain app, like maybe an older scanning app or any app that is a few years old that's really not compatible with the new graphics and such, you'll start seeing warnings that this is not going to be supported with the next version of macOS. This is the end of the line for any software that's giving you that warning. After Mojave, whatever the next software version is called, that will not support any of these apps that are now giving you this 32-bit warning. The parallel that you might have noticed this is on, if you have older apps on your iPhone device or iOS iPad, they gave the same warning with iOS 11 and 12 that certain apps were not going to be supported any longer. So if you go through your home screen and look at some apps, you might see some with a small X at the top left, even when they're not wiggling. And if you tap on that, it'll simply tell you this app is not supported. So if you have an app like that on your iOS device, there's nothing you can do to make it work anymore. It got stuck behind the hardware advancement. So those apps you can safely delete. And if you're using any apps that you regularly see a warning on, and this warning will be repeated every 30 days while you're opening the app. So if you're using an older app that you keep seeing this warning, be wary that the next time there's an update to the macOS, that app will stop working, and there's nothing you can do to make it work again unless you can find an old machine somewhere that you can run it on. So that's some of the caveats about the 32-bit apps. macOS updates are now shown in System Preferences instead of the App Store. So that's a new, you've been used to going to the App Store for updates. Now when you go to System Preferences, in the third row there's actually a selection for software update. So that's where you'll start to get your updates. You'll still get the notifications in the upper right window that updates are available, but you'll actually go to check on updates through System Preferences now. And macOS Mojave is only available from the App Store. So it's an App Store, there's no disks anymore, there haven't been for years, but this is no different. So you'll get this from the App Store. So one of the biggest things about Mojave that you might have seen or heard that they're kind of advertising a lot is dark mode. So users in System Preferences can switch to dark mode to make the whole backgrounds and everything color, a darker color, like a real dark gray, almost black. All the built-in apps, like mail messages, calendar, photos, news, iTunes, support this dark mode. So I'm going to show you some examples of it. But the important thing to remember is this is not on by default, but the way to turn it on, if you go to System Preferences in general, you'll see the option for dark mode at the very top of the screen. So on the left, under the Appearance tab, which is the first, you'll have a light and a dark option. Each side of this window shows you what happens when you click the dark mode versus the light mode. So the dark mode puts a blacker background with contrasting color white for the font, whereas that has a gray background with a black font. So you'll notice that all the menus that we're going to look at, all the apps that we're going to look at, are showing how dark mode looks rather than the standard mode, which is on the left. And again, these settings are in System Preferences General. That will bring up this window, and at the top you can choose between light and dark. So this is the Finder in both light and dark mode from side to side. So that's the standard look on the right and the dark mode on the left.
Jeff, are you going to send out this PDF?
Yeah, I'll put it on the website. So there'll be a link to this on the website under class or meeting notes. So there'll be a link and you can download this as a PDF. I wouldn't probably print it because it would use a lot of ink, but you can at least look at it on your device. So this is what the App Store looks like in dark mode. So everything's just darker. And you might have noticed that this started, there were a lot of iOS apps for iPads and iPhones that enabled a dark mode option prior to it coming to the macOS. So you might have noticed some of your apps, you could kind of reverse the coloring so that it was dark on or a darker background with lighter font. A lot of the news apps, certain newspapers, Audible, or not Audible, but the reading apps, you could always do this in iBooks, but this is now available. So that's what it looks like in the App Store. iTunes has a dark mode. Photos, that's what it looks like in dark mode. Your calendar has a dark mode. The next feature is what's called a dynamic desktop. So when you install the last couple of operating systems, you might have had a nice desktop photo of your grandkids or your pets or something, and all of a sudden they got replaced by something like this. What's happened is Apple has changed your default to the desktop of that operating system. You can always go into the System Preferences, go to Desktop and Screensaver and pull your old photo back. But when you install Mojave, this is what you'll see. And the neat thing about this desktop, it's called a dynamic desktop, but depending on the time of the day, you'll see a different picture of this sand dune.
Oh.
So in the morning, the light will be on one side, and then as the day goes on, as you see your desktop, the sun will seem to roll over this scene, and then by the time you're at night, it's dark again. So depending on where you are in the country or the world, your outside atmosphere will affect the desktop as well, because it'll know where you are with your time zone and location, so it will change the desktop. And this only happens with this default desktop that you're looking at. There are no other Apple desktops that have this feature yet. So this won't happen if you're looking at your kids or something. There won't be shadows that are moving around, transforming them. But with the default desktop of this sand dune that must be in the Mojave Desert or area, then that feature takes place. Yes.
Is the light mode giving you a more realistic desert picture?
Since this is the background, this isn't, dark and light mode doesn't come into play here. This is just the picture actually changes. They took they took the pictures or they photo edited, photoshopped it to make it look like different times of the day. So this will rotate. If you're using that desktop, it will go through that timeline whether you're using light or dark mode.
Right. I'm using dark mode, and it's like glare. It looks like a cartoon picture.
And with this desktop?
Yes.
I haven't seen that, but yeah.
And at night, it's almost totally black.
Oh, and that could also be depending on if you have contrast settings customized. Okay. That could make it look a little off, I think. So there are 16 different images that you'll see during the day for this desktop. And I think I only showed 12. So another feature in the desktop and Finder is called stacks. So if your desktop is like mine and a lot that I've seen, you might have a desktop that's just full of icons. And you don't want anybody to mess with it because you know where everything is. Although it looks like a jumbled mess to anyone else. So stacks will actually give you an option to kind of clean up the desktop based on document type. So the way that works is, here's a little video. So if this is your desktop, and you go to, let's see if we can get this to play here. There we go, the view menu, there's an option, let me go back, that says use stacks. So when you're in a Finder window and you're looking at your desktop, and you click on the view menu, there's an option that says use stacks, and boom, everything is sorted. And you can then order the stacks by date modified, date created, alphabetically. But you'll notice there are, well, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a stack for screenshots. There's a stack for PDF files. There's a stack for JPEG files. So it'll organize this by stack based on the file type. So if you have a bunch of PDFs scattered, and then to open a stack, you simply click on it and it expands. So to the right there shows what it looks like without stacks. So you've got different files all over the place. To the left, you'll see it with stacks enabled. So you'll notice that when you click on documents on the left, see that little arrow that points down from the documents on the right? That's the document stack opening up. And then when you tap on that arrow again, it falls back into the stack. So it doesn't expand and show you the entire contents of the stack, but when you click on it, it immediately fills the desktop with all the JPEGs or PDFs or documents that are in that stack. And this is a feature that you can turn on and off under the view menu. So you can either say view, show stacks, or view hide stacks. Hide stacks means everything's loose again. Show stacks gives you piles of documents.
Jeff, do you get to pick the criteria of how it sorts stuff into the stack?
You can't pick the criteria yet of how things are divided. Like there's a stack that'll say documents, and then there's a stack that says spreadsheets. But there's not a stack that says pages or word processing documents. So documents might include Word files, it might include text editing files, but spreadsheets is a little more narrow in its definition. It's probably numbers or Excel. So the stacks now are kind of fixed, but I'm sure that they might be able to customize it. The only thing you can customize now, as far as stacks, is the sorting or grouping of them. So you can sort by kind, date last opened, date added, modified, created. And if you're using tags, which we had a meeting on a couple of weeks ago, which I still haven't jumped on the bandwagon, you can sort stacks by tags. And again, that's under View Stacks. That's, you toggle that on or off. Yes?
Yeah. Can you put anything in a stacks file? Bundles, whatever?
It's kind of automatic. So if you're, like, I took a, and then there's another stack that I just saw today when I was doing some last minute screenshots, which you'll have a stack called Today, which is just files that I took today. But those files, if I take a screenshot, it'll go in this little Today stack, but it'll also be in the screenshots stack. So Today is more of a temporary holding place to show you recent items. That's a stack that appears. If you're saving files to your desktop, you'll see a Today option, but I'm sure at midnight, they just fall into their respective folder. But you can't, when you either turn stacks on or off, and PDFs, JPEGs will be in stacks, and there won't be anything else to drag into the stack. Now, you could probably drag from another place in the Finder onto a stack, but I don't know if you could drag a PDF onto the JPEG stack. I don't think it would stick. I think it would bounce to the PDF stack. Bill?
You don't get, files don't stick either, do they?
Folders
I'm sorry.
Folders don't, it doesn't group folders. Folders stay out of the stacks. So folders are folders, and they don't get put in the stack. I haven't seen a stack called folders yet. I probably had 20 folders on my desktop. They were still kind of loose outside the stack, because a folder could contain all kinds of stuff that they probably don't know how to categorize or don't want to put in a stack that would confuse people. So the stacks are pretty straightforward as far as JPEG, PDF, spreadsheets, documents, movies. So if you have those kind of files loose on your desktop, stacks will corral them into a nice little stack. So another thing in the desktop and Finder is called Gallery View. So it used to be called Cover Flow, where you would see kind of a little carousel. That option in the view, so you've got the icons, the list, the columns, and now what's called Gallery View. So Gallery View is kind of like Cover Flow in a way that it will show you photos at the bottom and then kind of a larger thumbnail at the top. Another interesting thing about the gallery or the desktop is this preview pane on the right. So you'll actually get within a Finder window, if you're browsing through files, information to the right that you would normally have to click with the Get Info command. So you'll see those right on the side here as you're going through Gallery View. And if you click Show More underneath the resolution and stuff, you'll actually see a lot more information, just like if you click Get Info. So when I click Show More, this is just an image that shows you what all is in there, but that shows you, the same things you would see in a Get Info window in Photos, about the camera type, the f-stop, the lighting, the aperture and all that. That's all listed here. And that's directly from the Finder when you're using the Gallery View layout. So you have 4 options for looking at your icons in the Finder. You have icons, list, columns, and now Gallery View. I think that's animating or something. Let me find out. There we go. So that's the preview pane. Now another thing you'll notice when you install Mojave, that there are new things that appear in your dock. Like with High Sierra, you saw a Siri icon in your dock. Now this time, you'll see an icon for news, which will be your top news stories. And this app, all the next 4 apps that I'm going to show that now appear on your computer were ported over from your iOS devices. So for a couple of years, you've had news apps on your phone and iPad. Those, whatever you've been looking at, if you save certain stories or follow certain news sources, that syncs with your computer now. So the news that you're used to seeing on your iPad and iPhone is going to be the news that you see on your computer by default because your preferences sync through iCloud. So you won't be starting over. So depending on what stories you follow, you know, there's a Macworld news feed. There's a Tesla news feed that I follow. Another thing you'll have is a new home app. So for a couple of years, you've been able, if you have smart home appliances that are HomeLink compatible with Apple stuff, light bulbs, coffee makers, whatever you might have that you can control with your phone and Siri, you can now use your computer to control. So when I was at the office working on this slideshow, I could have, 3 of those lights were turned off manually, like with a switch, but the ones that are on smart switches, I could have turned on and off, but I didn't want to scare anyone at the house. But you could do this from any computer, wherever you are, if it's synced, if you have these things set up on your iOS device. So if you have your iOS device, even if you're not there, you could tell your HomePod to start playing music. But be wary that could scare someone. So that's new to the Mac. You haven't been able to do that from your computer prior to Mojave. And again, there's stocks. So I took this picture today. There was a lot of red, but you'll have the stocks app that syncs with the app that you might have been using on your iPad or iPhone. So you'll see the same things that you've been watching there in the stock app. Voice memos. If you use voice memos on your iOS device, you now have the ability to create and edit those voice memos on your Mac. And they also sync through the cloud. So when you open this up, if you have voice memos that you've put on your portable device, they'll appear here. And if you delete it here, it will delete from your device. So they sync via the cloud, and it's always going to warn you, like photos, if you're using iCloud Photo Library and you delete pictures on your phone, it's going to warn you. Deleting this picture will remove it from all your devices. The same thing will happen in voice memos now. So if you wanted to clean that up and you're at your computer and it's easier to do, you could edit them from here.
Can you make a memo from the computer?
Yes, if you click that red button, you can record a voice memo directly on your computer, and then it will appear on your iPad or iPhone later that day, I guess. A few hours, a few minutes, yeah. Yes, sir.
The news app appeared to adopt. The other ones you've mentioned didn't.
Yeah, they're in the app. If you install Mojave, the applications folder contains voice memo, news, home, and stocks. So if they're not in your dock, for some reason, you can go to the applications folder and drag them back down there. I think the news came over for everybody, but the stocks, the voice memos, and the home didn't, because I don't think they want to clutter up your dock too much, but you can always go to the applications folder in a Finder window to bring dock items down from there.
Just go hit, I just tried it, just go hit Launchpad, and when you're looking at the little icons, that's an easy way to.
That's an easy way to get to it too.
They're all 3 in a
right?
row.
So screenshots have been a little different. For years, you've been using Command-Shift-3 and Command-Shift-4. Command-Shift-3 will take a picture of the entire screen contents. Command-Shift-4 lets you drag the crosshairs and use the spacebar to grab a section of the screen. There's a new screenshot command, Command-Shift-5. So if you do Command-Shift-3 or Command-Shift-4, the icon, the thumbnail for the screenshot will jump down to the bottom right corner of your screen, and if you click on it, you'll then have some options to edit it and do markup and such. With Command-Shift-5, you'll see this window presented. And you have icons there for capture entire screen, capture selected window, capture selected portion, record entire screen, record selected portion, an options button, and then a record button. So if you click the options button, you can specify what you want to do with that screenshot as soon as you take it. Put it to your desktop, put it in documents, send it in mail, send it in a message, send it to QuickTime Player. A timer for the start of the shot. You know, you can set a 5 or 10 second timer. You can choose microphone display if you're doing a recording, if you want to use the audio from the screen, or if you want to use a narration. And then show mouse clicks if you're doing a screen recording and your mouse is moving around and you're clicking things. It'll give a little animation when you click something in the final video. So this is a new screenshot tool where you can specify this stuff kind of before you take it. before to do a video recording, you'd have to open QuickTime Player and go to File, New Screen Recording, select an area, and then hit record, and then this is one click. So there's record entire screen and record selected portion. If you choose either of those and then you click the record button, it will then prompt you, if you've chosen record selected portion, you'll then be prompted to select the area in which you want to record. And then there'll be a button that says record, start recording.
So we can, in the future, use this to record the meeting off the computer.
You could, but they get to be pretty big files. So if you were recording one of these meetings, it might last 30 or 45 minutes, the file would be pretty big. It could take up a big chunk of your hard drive. I mean, they're going to be, I don't know what it is per minute, but it could turn into a couple of gigabytes pretty quick, I think. So depending on the device you're using, you may or may not want to record, a talk show on YouTube with this. You certainly could, but just be wary that these audio-video files are big files, so they could take up a big chunk of your hard drive depending on the device you're using. So if you've got a 3 terabyte iMac, it's not as big of a deal as if you have a 124 gigabyte MacBook Air. So be cautious about using screen recording because the files can get pretty big pretty quick if you're going to do some kind of video recording. Like a meeting like this, I would be wary of it because of the size.
Could you do a video recording using an external hard drive?
If you chose other location, you could specify an external hard drive.
Okay.
I think it would write it to your computer initially and then save it there when you complete. So while you're recording, it's going to have to be saved to your device drive. But at the end, if you choose this, it'll move it there when it's done. So you'd have to have the available space to record it. So, and if you want to test this, you can always go to record entire screen, let it run for 5 minutes, and then see how big the file is. So I just know that they get pretty big pretty quick.
Yeah, the reason I ask you is there's another Mac user group that uses, I think it's ScreenFlow.
ScreenFlow, yeah.
Which this pretty much does the same thing now. Do you see your own picture in any of those? Does any of you turn the camera on?
No, unless you were doing like a recording, because this will record anything you see on your screen. So the only time you would see yourself is if you had FaceTime on and saw that camera view. But by default, it would have to be an app that used the front camera on the screen. Whereas ScreenFlow is more of a like an editing type. You can compress video. You can actually crop a video real easy in ScreenFlow. So a lot of the video podcasts use ScreenFlow. You can use animation tools in ScreenFlow, whereas this is just pretty much a straight up video of what's happening on your screen for a specified amount of time. Yes, Jeanette?
If you want to record a meeting, would you use this program where it says built-in microphone? Is that what you'd use?
Well, if I was going to record a meeting, I might just use an audio with my iPhone or iPad, or use voice memos or something. Whereas this, you couldn't really turn the Mac around easily and turn on the cameras to get a good video of a meeting, I wouldn't think. I would think if you were to do audio, I might use my portable device rather than try to use this method.
Okay.
And these are going to have better microphones on them than your computer, and that often depends on placement and where it is in the room. And the microphones on these are not as good as the ones in your phones.
Thank you.
So Command-Shift-5 is something you can play with rather than just the standards that have been around for a few years. So this is new in Mojave. Carolyn?
Yeah, this is similar to what you can do on your iOS device with record. And,
Right, the
yeah.
shortcut.
Yeah, and it's like, it takes a lot of space like a movie. So they are really big files if you record for any length of time. Something that would be useful in this is if you're showing somebody how to do some specific activity on your device, or on your computer. How do I go to the mail thing and do that? That would be a handy thing to do, to show. Like the notebook videos, you know, you
Right.
can make a short little video of how to do something, but it does take as much space as a big movie, so.
Yeah, because a lot of times with my job, I go to people's houses and help them with all this stuff, and they'll say, well, it was doing this, and I tell them, well, here's how to take a screenshot. Now they'd be able to take a video to save, to show someone, maybe to ask someone what something was even. You know, this keeps happening. It's kind of hard to describe some of this stuff, but when you see it, it gives you a better idea
See
of
if
what
they're
you're looking
skipping-
for.
yeah, you can see if you're skipping a command or, yeah.
Right, yeah, it could be a number of things that when you see it, it's a lot easier. Some things with technology are easier seen than verbalized.
It's like even if you go to the Apple store, and it's like going to the doctor, but you don't have the pain when you get there, record it. Record the issue, and then show it to them at the Apple store, or wherever, or at one of our...
Yeah, that's another thing. If you're going in for some troubleshooting, this would be a great tool for you to document something with the recording rather than just a screenshot. One of the coolest features, I think, is what's called continuity camera. So basically, when you're using your Mac, you can use your iPhone, iPad, or iPod to scan documents or take a photo of something, and it will appear instantly on your Mac. So Mail, the Finder, Pages, Messages can all use this, what they call continuity camera. So there are a few requirements to use continuity camera. You have to have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth turned on your computer and your portable device. You have to be using two-factor authentication, and they have to be signed into the same iCloud account. And this only works on Mojave and a device using iOS 12. So unless you've updated it to the most recent software for both your portable and your computer devices, this won't work. So the apps you can use, Finder, Keynote, Mail, Messages, Notes, Numbers, Pages, and these are the newest version of Numbers, Pages, and Keynote, which have been released along with iOS, with Mojave and iOS 12 for the devices. And to get this option, you can either right or control click, or use the action menu, which is the little gear in a Finder window. So any of those three choices, whether you do a right click, a control click, a two-finger click, anything to get that secondary menu to appear, you'll now see an option. Let me show you. This is what it looks like. So normally you have cut, copy, and paste. You'll now have an option that says import from iPhone or iPad. You'll have the option to either take a photo from either device that might be present, in this case an iPad and then an iPhone, or scan a photo. Now if you take a photo, a little button will appear like it does on your camera. You'll take a picture. It'll instantly be inserted into that mail message or that document that you have on the screen where you started this command with. If you scan a document, you'll have to hold the phone over that document still for a second and let it won't actually go scan like up and down like your copy machine does, but it'll tell you when it's done, and then it will capture that, including text recognition. So taking a photo and scanning a document, the scanned document, you could actually copy and paste the text into a Pages file rather than just a photo. You can't select text in a photo. So does that make sense? A scan, you can extract text from. A photo is just a photo. Even if it's a photo of a page, you can't copy the words from a photo into a Pages document. But if it's scanned and it does the character recognition, the OCR, then you could manipulate the text and such. So again, how to use the continuity camera. You control click or choose the file insert. So you open the supported app on your Mac. You control click in the document where you want the photo to appear. And then you choose import or insert from the iPad or iPhone. And then it will appear right in that document. So that's a pretty neat feature. Now to scan documents again, you control click in the document or window where you want your scan to appear. So if you were in the Finder and you had a folder called tax forms and you had some receipt you needed, instead of having to take a picture of it and email it to yourself or put it on a flatbed scanner and scan it in, you could actually just right click in the Finder in the folder where you want to put this scan, this receipt, control click, choose import from phone, You choose Scan Document. You place the document in front. You have to wait for it to finish because it's doing the character recognition. You can drag the corners to adjust it. And then it'll appear in a PDF in the document or the file window on your computer. And again, you can right-click or control-click to use that menu.
So Jeff, in simplistic terms, are you using your mobile device to be the thing that captures the image, and through continuity, you're then bringing it into your computer, which is your storage device?
Right, so like for example, if I go to Pages, and I go to a new document, and I've got a blank document here. So if I right-click, I've got the option to import from my phone, which my phone is called Network Error Restart Modem Immediately. Because when you have these programs that can scan for devices, normally it would say, George's iPad is online. Mine says network error, so it'll confuse people, and they won't know that. So if I say take photo, if you watch my phone, the phone's going to automatically shift to a camera. So I'll put this out in the crowd here. So I've got that photo. I tap the button. I hit use photo. And then boom. So that's the benefit of continuity camera. Otherwise, you're having to take photos, open photos, export it. It saves you a lot of steps. And it's a time saver. It won't work for everything, but there are places where that might come in useful.
So this is where you can save it for your external drive.
Now the continuity camera, when you start it kind of in the program where you want the picture to end up. So if you want to insert something into Pages, or Mail, or Messages, when you right-click in that document or place, it'll go to that destination. Now if you open a Finder window and you chose an external drive, and you right-click there and said insert a photo, it will put that photo into that external drive at that point. But by default, it's going to go into the whatever document that you clicked this in. So when you click the right-click or control-click or click the gear menu and you import from iPhone or iPad, it's going to put the resulting photo into the document where you're sitting kind of at that moment. So and I haven't had it come into practical use, but for instances like this, it's kind of fun. But let's say you were doing maybe eBay, and you wanted to get some quick photos into a listing. I don't know if it works with eBay, but technically, if you can cut, copy, and paste, this menu should show up, and you could insert photos right into an eBay listing from your phone. So it's got plenty of applications, but the biggest thing is it'll save you 4 or 5 steps versus the standard practice for getting photos into a document from scratch. Because normally you take a photo, then you'd have to open Photos, go to the Photos menu, or go to the Photo menu in Photos and choose a photo browser and browse through folders. So this is just a quick way in a couple of clicks to get items that you can see with your device into your computer. And I think that is the end of the show. So any questions, comments, or observations about Mojave? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question that you started with. I downloaded Mojave on my iMac, and when I opened Photoshop is on my computer is one that I bought 10 years ago. I don't pay the monthly.
You're not a subscription, right?
So anyway, I can't upgrade it. But I did have a warning that came up that said that it couldn't be updated or something like that. So is that in any danger of going away?
Was the Adobe, do you know if the warning was from Adobe, or was it a Mojave warning from Apple about 32-bit?
I think it was I can't remember, but my best guess is that it was from Apple.
Yeah, if it was something about 30...
It's, Photoshop still works, but it's important to me. And when you said that you get another one in 30 days and it could go away, that scares me.
Well, the warnings stop in an app after 30 days, but they give you 30 days of warning every time you open that Photoshop, but that's on the list. Basically, that's saying it works now, but it's not going to work next year. You couldn't update your computer next year because that software is not compatible as everything else is advanced. That software is still stuck in 2012 or something, or 2008, or, so there's going to be a time where you can't open that. And there's a website, let me see if I can find it, because there is a website that will tell you what apps are compatible with what systems. And they use kind of a crowd-based reporting system, where if you're using Adobe Photoshop CS5, for example, and you go to this website and you say, yes, it works under Mojave, but I'm getting errors every time I open it, that they'll use that to compile their chart. And it's called roaringapps.com. So I'll pull up the website, but it'll show you
What's it called?
Roaring, R-O-A-R-I-N-G, apps. So you can search for, so we'll put in Adobe Photoshop here. And we'll say, do you know what version you have offhand?
No, sorry.
Let's say it's CS6. That's a few years old. So that'll then, let's see. So that's telling you, see all these green dots up here? That works under Mojave, High Sierra, Sierra, El Capitan, Yosemite, Mavericks. So you'll see, and then you'll see notes down here where people will say things. So that particular version, so if you go to roaringapps.com, if you've got some version of some kind of not main road software, an older version of something that you've been using for a while, if you go to roaringapps.com, and I don't know how they make their money, you don't have to sign up or anything, there's probably ads somewhere at the bottom, they will give you a chart like this, and if there's a big red dot over Mojave, and you're using Photoshop CS5, if you look at this before you do it, you'll know that it's not going to close your program down. So too often, though, people just update, and then they're surprised when their Quicken Essentials doesn't work. And you've gotten emails and stuff from Quicken that tell you it's not going to work, but still, this chart would tell you if the software that you might need is going to work under an operating system that's been released. So this is a site that I'll tell people to check occasionally if they're not sure if something's going to work in the future, if you're using some software that's a few years old. This is a site you can go to determine whether anything is going to break an app.
So in this case, it appears that Adobe has stopped updating the program.
Yeah, and often as software manufacturers release newer versions, there comes a point where they don't release any updates for older versions.
And once you buy the new one.
Right, because now they do a subscription plan, for $10 a month, you're going to have Photoshop, and you always have the most recent version. So that's what I personally do. But it's a line that you have to decide for yourself is whether, they're Quicken, the place that makes the financial software. They had a program called Quicken Essentials in 2014 and 2015. And then they came out with Quicken 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. Well, I think with High Sierra, Quicken Essentials stopped working. And Quicken always pops up these ads saying, hey, do you want to update? And everybody says, no, I'll wait. But then if you wait too long, it gets shut out and you're locked and you can't get into your Quicken file. So that was one episode that happened to a lot of people that I saw. So just be aware that when apps or you get emails from an app manufacturer that you've registered software for that tell you that there's a newer version, read the details because they might tell you that, this version is not going to work when you install Mojave. So in most of the software that you register for, you'll hopefully be on a mailing list for, that you would get these updates, but read the emails about the new versions because they'll often include clues that might warn you of a big red dot that's going to show up when you look at this website. So it'd be better, obviously, to find out before this happens because it's hard to roll back software on a Mac. It's not impossible, but it's not easy. So
there's no page that I can pull up on my Mac after I've installed that says, hey, these softwares that you have in your system are not going to work. I thought they used to have that on some versions.
I haven't seen that site. I know that when you install or if you do a software update on your computer, if you go to the applications folder, the applications that have been rendered useless will have like a little symbol, like a Ghostbuster symbol, with a little line with a slash through it. So apps that, if you see an app like that in your applications folder, you can toss it out because it won't work with any new computer or software.
A couple more quickies. Have you run into anybody who's had a lot of difficulty installing this? Because I spent 2 hours on the phone about it.
I haven't had any. The biggest thing is people will install it and then it doesn't, if you don't hit continue right away, it'll just sit in your applications folder, but I haven't had any issues with installation.
Locked my system. I'll tell you how I finally installed it is I had a bootable backup.
And you had to,
I logged in and started up the bootable backup, put it on the bootable backup, then I copied the bootable backup to my main
to the hard drive?
and now it works fine. But one thing that's happening, the other thing I was going to ask, and I didn't read exactly, I should take a photo of it. Now, when I hit the icon for 1Password on Safari, it's filling in the password, but a pop-up's coming up about
Yes.
and I don't know what that garbage is.
I'm getting the same thing.
And you have a 1Password subscription now?
No.
Oh, so it's probably about, they have a standalone version of 1Password, but I subscribe, so I don't see anything like that, but I would imagine if you have a version of 1Password that you paid for once and you're still using it, it's probably related to that somehow.
Eventually, they're going to want you to.
Yeah, everybody's pushing towards the subscription, which the good thing is you always have the most recent version for $5 a month or whatever, but you don't get that grandfathered in. That doesn't last forever. So they're probably, I would guess, giving you warnings about this might not work.
I'll have to look at it more closely.
It's probably a pitch to subscribe.
It doesn't say anything about subscribing. It fills in the passcode, but it says, hey, there's something screwy here, and I got to take a picture of it.
Maybe try reinstalling the Safari extension.
That's
That's what mine said. It had
Oh.
something to do with.
So they might have updated the extension for Safari 12,
Okay,
and you might just need to go to 1Password and click on Safari extension and download that. That might solve that issue.
Okay.
It's a big
Right.
Martin?
I was just going to comment on that. All the browsers require that you do install the 1Password extensions.
Especially after an upgrade, probably. So it might work, but it might be a little shaky until you get the new extension.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a High Sierra now, and I'm a relatively new iMac user, but I'm always asking for updates. And shouldn't Mojave come up automatically if it's available?
Well, no, the incremental updates on your devices and computer, you can set to install automatically, which are mostly security updates. A certain printer has an issue, it'll download the update automatically. However, the big yearly updates, you have to instigate yourself.
Oh,
So,
go to system preferences and...
well, and Mojave, to install Mojave, you can actually go to the App Store.
Okay.
And future updates for the computer will come through system preferences, but the next version of software, whether it's Yosemite Peak or whatever next year, the software itself will still come from the App Store, but updates come from within system preferences now. It used to be the software updates were in the App Store prior to Mojave. So right now, everybody that doesn't have Mojave goes to the App Store to check for updates, whereas the App Store is where you'll download the actual software from, but system preferences handles the updates now.
I think it's free.
And it is free, yeah, there's no cost for this for probably a decade now, I guess.
I don't know how I know about this, but I think Jerry showed us a way to put all the applications in a column. I don't know if you just do that or you have to engage some kind of other command, but all the applications were in columns with information in each column about the application. And one column had how many bits the application was. So there was a way to figure out which were 32s and I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, I've seen that too, and I don't think it's in the Finder.
It was maybe some command he showed, or it might have been some app he showed. But
Or did it show up in your applications folder, grouped in a folder?
Yeah, and this will show you, you can see the, let me turn off dark mode, because it might be a little easier to see on the screen. It's like you can, one thing you can do is also, if you search by date modified, and go down to the top or bottom, like App Zapper hasn't been updated since 2010. I mean, I think it still works, but it might not for long. And that didn't give me a warning, so. But there are certain apps, Drive Genius 3, there might be certain apps that I open that will give me that warning. Let me see if I can find one. Now that, I don't know, I install that. Let's see. So here's one. Here's the warning that they're talking about. Labels and addresses is not optimized for your Mac and needs to be updated. This app will not work with future versions of macOS and needs to be updated. Contact the developer for more information. So here's an app that I use occasionally for printing envelopes and such. And it works with this, but this is the kind of warning you're going to see once every 30 days, or for 30 days. So every time I try to open this app for 30 days, it's going to show me this. But until the people that make labels and addresses fixes it, when 10.15 comes out, labels and addresses will not work, and that's what they're telling you with this window. So this is the window that you'll see every time you open the app for 30 days after you install Mojave. And it's just telling you this program is not going to work after Mojave. So Mojave is the last plank that this program is going to walk.
But they should work at the moment then, until the update
It'll work
comes
until
on.
the successor to Mojave comes out. And that's what they're telling you, is that this is the last, that this app is it's on its last legs when you see that little window.
if it doesn't work at all, isn't there like a cross sign?
Yeah, you'll see that little, let me see if I have one.
There's like a little circle with a line
Do not
across it.
enter.
Yeah, I think I just went in and cleaned those up, because you'll see them once in a while.
It's over the little icon of the app.
Right, it'll be like a little circle with a line through it, like do not smoke type thing, and it'll be over the app, but it's gray, it's not red. But that's what you'll see on apps that have just been already zoned out. Those apps won't work on the current software, on the current machine. And you'd have to buy an old Mac off eBay if you absolutely need it to run that software.